So today, we are going to look at Ghana. The president of Ghana, in his recent interview, a discussion with Modu Maya, he came out with a very good discussion, and one of his thoughts is talking about how Africa should be borderless. A borderless Africa. People should find, I don't know, what and what and what.
Nkrumah talked about borderless Africa. Yeah. I've been a victim. I just had a brawl at the Togo-Ghana border just because I refused to pay bribe. Yeah. I mean, as a young African trying to travel within Africa, it's extremely difficult to travel within Africa. I mean, you're once a president. You don't think Africa need a border? We should be a borderless continent, just like Europe. I had a visa for Germany. I was in Austria. I was in Netherlands. No one asked me anything. But on the continent of Africa, there's no free movement of people and goods. I mean, I will want to ask you, because I'm so much advocate for this. And when you come to power, what are you going to do to change that?
Well, I was president of Ghana, and so I was a member of the AU, Authority of African Heads of States. We prepared the protocol for visa-free travel in Africa. We're going to pass it in Kigali. At the last minute, there were objections from, I remember South Africa, but there were 2 or 3 countries that objected and said we should delay it until much later. Now, you know what I did? I came back to Ghana and I said, well, if the other countries won't pass it, we'll pass it in Ghana. And so I allowed visa-free travel for all African passports. You can apply for your visa at the airport. And people started taking advantage of it. Today, if you have an African passport, you can travel to Accra and apply for the visa when you get to Accra. And it hasn't changed Ghana in any way. Nothing extraordinary has happened. So I don't see why we cannot start with visa-free travel. In ECOWAS, we have it. ECOWAS, if you fly into Nigeria, you don't need a visa. I agree with you that the borders and the parochial things that the people do there it's not sanctioned. I mean, these are corrupt individuals who try to take advantage of a situation. Otherwise, in ECOWAS, we should be able to travel to and from each other's countries without paying anything, the passport control or whatever control is just for record purposes and to capture the statistics of how people go back and forth.
And how is he going to do it to make sure Africa becomes borderless?
A borderless Africa is an idea. It's a good idea. It's a good vision. It actually, it is what the foundations of African Unity, Organization of African Unity, that Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and other Pan-Africans like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere wanted. They wanted to see a united Africa. But because of the failures of the leaders then, and the divisions, and the interference of imperialists, it collapsed. Colonel Gaddafi attempted to revive it in the last few decades, but still there were problems until Gaddafi himself was killed by the whites and the cooperation of some African leaders that were hiding behind the war in Libya. So it's a good idea, because Africa, like I've already said, is about brotherhood. It's about unity. We are one. But because of poor leaders, because of poor leadership, because of the divisions, because of the different political systems and the lack of democracy in most of the African countries, it's almost like a nightmare. It's an illusion. Because if specific countries have failed to embrace democratic principles, if we have failed to have the same currency, if you see the number of wars in West Africa, in Congo, in Somalia, it just shows you that it is going to be extremely difficult. So the strengths of Africa rise in the strengths of individual states. So a borderless Africa is a good idea. The dream of Mahama is a very big dream. And it's an idea, and it's what we desire. But is it achievable when even specific countries have failed to achieve the minimum economic indicators, the minimum political systems and democracy? So it's an illusion.
Here we jump to Burkina Faso. There is a recent petition which was in a certain website. It's just a petition which is saying that in an attempt for Africa to become borderless, we are likely to go for one president. And the fact that we are seeing a serious change in Burkina Faso, that president is likely to be Ibrahim Traore, 36 years old, the most youngest leader we have in Africa.
So there's a petition that was created on change.org, and you are not going to believe what the cause is. The petition is created for advocating President Ibrahim Traore to become a single leader for a borderless Africa. And so far, they have gotten over 1,400 signature. And this is legit, fam. I am not making this stuff up. Let me read for you what they stand for. The petition description says, the existing divided leadership in Africa has led to disparities in growth, development, and inequality across the continent. This petition aims to dissolve the colonial borders and bring together the diverse nations of Africa under collective leadership for a more united, robust Africa. We propose Ibrahim Traore, the current president of Burkina Faso, to be the united president of Africa. With a solid track record, his leadership would ensure equitable development, a single currency, and a unified national flag representing all African nations.
Can Ibrahim Traore manage to rule Africa alone?
Whereas it's exciting, we have a lot of hope and enthusiasm about Traore, but like I said, Traore can only operate in an environment that is ideal, because there are systems. He must come out of either regional bodies like African Union or other bodies that will be formed. So he cannot just be wished by, because definitely they are going to put systems, they are going to put policies, they are going to put structures. So would Traore necessarily emerge as the leader for Africa? So, and after all, how many African leaders, because they will be chosen by leaders, it may not necessarily be the citizens of different countries. So, would Traore now be the ideal candidate for the presidents who are performing poor in their countries? Because some of them, like I said last time, like the way they never liked Professor Magufuli, because of his systems being close to people, his simplicity, his love for development, his prudence, some of them live big, even when they're in poor countries, even when the populations of those countries cannot meet basics. The presidents live like imperial presidents, convoys, family rule, properties. They have streets in California, and yet the populations where they come from don't even have basics like water, like good schools. So whereas Traore is is very promising, he's young, he's developmental, he's visionary, but given the systems now that we have, unless the leaders, change their thinking, it's not a must that Traore would emerge as the ideal what, and it's likely to be rotational. That's what they do in African Union. You remember at one time, General Amin was a chairman of African Union, and some people like Nyerere and others walked away. Yes. So, if the policies, if the structures of African Union don't choose him as a leader or don't enable him, then it will be a rotational office which can easily go to an idiot or even a fool, or not Traore, who is visionary. At one time, Amin was the chairman of African Union, even as he was killing people. So it's not a must that the structures of African Union now have a problem. Unless they're structured properly. The other day you saw when they were voting the chairman, the likely candidates did not come up. Because eventually the people look at different things. You find there are countries that are looking at religion, there are other countries that are looking at other political groupings. Some countries have their own problems just between presidents, not even between the citizens. And that affects the way regional bodies run and the way African Union runs. And that's why even now the regional bodies of African Union has not been able to solve the problems in Congo or South Sudan or in these countries that have challenges of security or even democratic principles.
Let's come to Democratic Republic of Congo. M23 has captured up to Uvira right now. This is the latest news. Bukavu, South Kivu, up to Uvira. What are you seeing in M23 right now? The speed at which they are operating in. And surely, what do you think should be done to save Congo?
Like I've already said, Congo is a big nation. It's the second biggest country in Africa. It's one of the richest countries in Africa and the world. Unfortunately, because of bad leadership, because of interference of the whites and the failures of UN and African Union, Congo has been a theater of bloodshed, of plunder, of wars, of militias, which is very unfortunate. And what's happening now is only sad. If you see the number of people that have died, much of it is not being reported because it's not captured by the media. And different groups are killing. Yes, they are groups that are deployed by government, and they are killing citizens of certain ethnic groups, yes, whom they think that they are sympathetic to M23. Of course, M23, like General Tinyefuza one time said, war is not all communion. And they are not giving people cakes or bread or what. No, there is a lot of killings going on. Because there are different militia groups fighting, there are different countries fighting, there is M23, there is support of Burundi indirectly, and so there are different groups. So there is a lot of killings, which is very unfortunate. So M23, like I've already said, it's as if there is an invisible hand, because the power and the energy and the speed at which they are moving is very surprising. It's very surprising. And unless Tshisekedi, becomes wise and goes for peace talks, I am afraid Kinshasa is likely to fall. Because if Uganda has taken over the other parts of Ituri and Beni, and now the whole of North Kivu was almost captured by M23, yes, in a relatively short time. Yes. Bukavu fell. Now Uvira has fallen. They have closed off the surprise and links from Burundi, because the president of Burundi supports Tshisekedi. He's one of the people that keeps misleading him. Instead of talking about peace talks and understanding with the M23 and the fighting forces, General Ndayishimiye of Burundi keeps telling Tshisekedi, like Ramaphosa, that they should fight. They are taking a radical stand. Do they have the capacity to sustain that war, to fight and win outright at the battlefield? No. The manifestations, the results, what we see on the ground is that Tshisekedi is a weak man that is not listening, that is defiant, that is unreasonable, that he sustains war where people are dying, and he's running around even in developed countries that is looking for support. That support will not work, because even the president of Uganda, who has his own problems here of democratic principles, but he has told him, as an experienced leader in Africa, that peace talks are very important, that he talks to M23 so that they resolve their matters. Those Congolese who are refugees in Uganda and Congo go back, which Tshisekedi is not listening to. There were meetings of regional bodies, East African Community and SADC. Tshisekedi absconded. He did not attend those meetings. Instead, he went to Germany.
Let me ask. We see M23 are commandos, are trained people who are highly trained. Now, if you are really a president and you are likely to receive someone whom is not you who even trained to such a capacity, you bring him home. Even if you as a president, don't you feel that pressure and the fear of welcoming someone who is now already a commando and it is not you even who train him?
There are precedents. There have been rebel groups. There have been armies that have been in Angola, in South Sudan. There are countries where rebel groups have been, even Uganda. They have been, they emerge. There are different forces, fighting forces that emerge and form an army. So it's just a question, the moment they agree on the minimum terms on how they will work together, those who are highly trained to that level, can we put in specialized forces? Because now, one of the things that Congo needs, one of the solutions rather than a visionary leader, is a strong army. So they are lucky that now these ones are highly trained. So it will be a good, a good enforcement. It will be a good addition to Congo's army. They can be put in a specialized force. As long as they don't, they must scatter them in different groupings so that they don't form their own army. And so that at one time take over government. No, they should put them in different battalions and different sectors, different departments. Then they instead now they use them to train the Congo army, to have intelligence, to have marine, to have air force, to have, a strong force, a national army that will be able to defend Congo. So these countries and these other individuals that go there, individual presidents, for plunder, for gold and diamonds and they just work in Congo anyhow. Now if they have a strong army, like the way M23 is trained, then that will be a good addition to Congo, that they should have an army. So to me, it's an advantage. As long as they agree and they don't kill them. Because at times they have agreed on certain terms at different times over the years. But every time they have an agreement, Congo eventually renegates and doesn't fulfill the terms and conditions on which they agreed. So it's okay for them to integrate them, the soldiers in the Congo army and the civilians go back to their respective home areas.
The problem of security in Congo started at independence when Prime Minister Lumumba was killed. And then you had got agents of foreign interests taking over power in the form of Mobutu. Congo has never settled properly. And the immediate problem now is that actually for a long time, Congo has been either supporting or harboring the enemies of other countries. The Mobutu used to support Savimbi of Angola, used to support Holden Robert. We have got ADF in Congo, we have got other groups from Uganda, then you have groups from Rwanda, the Interahamwe. So that's really the origin of the problem. The Congo either supporting or simply harboring these enemies of other countries, of the neighboring countries. But now we have got a regional forum, the East African Forum, chaired by His Excellency Kenyatta. And we think now this problem can be solved.
Let's come here to Uganda. We are seeing one of the things which is happening, and somehow it is bringing instability. Opposition leader, that is Kizza Besigye, who has been detained for a lot of time. What do you see in Uganda right now?
I think 2 months ago, Patrick, me and you had a discussion about Kizza Besigye. And my position then was, since I maintain that Besigye should have been released, they do proper investigations and is tried through the normal courts, not the court martial. Unfortunately, they maintain him in the court martial using illegalities according to the Supreme Court, what came out of the Supreme Court. Now, fortunately today, he appeared in a civil court in Nakawa. But if you see the harbor, if you see the grief, if you see the agony, if you see the pain, if you see the arguments on different forums across Kenya, across Uganda, about the plight and the suffering of Dr. Besigye. We are not suggesting, because we don't have all the information, that it's possible that Besigye has cases to answer. It's the state to provide the evidence, credible evidence, that will implicate Besigye. But Besigye should be treated humanly. Besigye should be taken, should be released, given bail. He goes for treatment. He can always go to court. And the state should not fabricate evidence. I've seen an enthusiastic journalist called Andrew Mwenda, a fortune hunter, who was claiming that he has evidence against Besigye, and he was on NBS at Frontline, debating with one of the MPs called Semuju. They were almost fighting. They were behaving like idiots, just shouting instead of bringing out the facts and ideas and they discuss. Mwenda is not a judge. Mwenda is not an investigating body. Mwenda is not a policeman. So Mwenda can only talk. That's bad talk. It's street talk. Besigye is a hero. He's a freedom fighter. He's an icon in Uganda. Besigye treated President Museveni in the bush, treated genocide and many other generals, including Sejusa, David, and many others that would have been amputated, that would have died in the bush. So Besigye was on the high command of NRM. He was one of the first, he was the youngest minister for State for Internal Affairs and Minister for Presidency. He was the National Political Commissar. Besigye has been the struggles, he has been in the trenches to make sure that the democratic principles of this country develop. So Besigye should not be treated like a dog. Besigye should be respected as a freedom fighter, as a Ugandan, as a professional doctor, as an elder, as a leader. One of the things that made Besigye depart from Museveni and NRM, Besigye wrote a document, a dossier in 1999. And Besigye was saying that the principles over which they fought for in the Luwero Triangle for 5 years has been departed from. And perhaps history is on Besigye's side. That case should be answered. They should bring evidence, but they should not implicate Besigye in matters that are political. Besigye should be given bail. They should treat him as a leader, as a freedom fighter.